All right, so the next part of my series on safe motorcycling, or how to survive riding a motorcycle, is going to be on the mindset, the mentality of the rider. Now, I'm going to start off saying this with something that happened recently that I saw it happening, I saw it developing, and I was kind of hoping that I would get around to this before this happened, but I unfortunately was sidetracked by a few things, and Yamaha beat me to the punch. They announced that they're going to have an AI system for motorcycles, and I could see this coming a while away, and I think it's time to make this point. Ultimately, the factor about riding a motorcycle that truly makes it dangerous is not the fact that it's so light and a car can run over it, or a truck can crush it, or whatever, or it's only got two wheels and that makes it dangerous on slick surfaces or even graded roads. It's really the fact that there's someone on top of that bike who just may be quasi-suicidal. Either they're not mentally capable of riding the bike safely, or they have insufficient interest in riding it safely. Let's put it that way. Or maybe their understanding of the science of riding a motorcycle is somewhat warped and possibly dangerous to their own health. Or even possibly they're just not mentally acute enough. They can't think fast enough. They lack the ability to process data quickly enough and rationally enough to be a safe rider. There are a number of ways that the brain can fail you as a motorcycle rider. And I think this is something which would really require, like 2 or 3 in-depth, sections on. But I'm going to just state it, in a bald manner, and say one of the reasons why riding a motorcycle is such a powerful urge for people is because they want to try to disprove the fact that they're just not mentally very good, and they want to go out and prove that they are by doing risky things like riding motorcycles, things that require a certain degree of mental capability to do safely. They challenge themselves to do something which they're not sure they can do, at least. They challenge themselves to do something which there's a good chance that they'll fail at doing, at the least, because they want to stretch their boundaries and all this kind of stuff. So that's one thing which I think is a major issue, is you have people riding bikes who really shouldn't be riding bikes. Let's face it, there's a certain percentage of people who should not be riding motorcycles because they just don't have what it takes to be a safe rider, but they're gonna do it anyway just because they want to stretch their capabilities, and also because no one is going to tell them that they can't ride. They refuse to accept the realities or the restrictions of society that says you shouldn't ride a bike. This is bad. This is wrong. This is stupid. You aren't smart enough to ride. You're not cool enough. You're not badass enough. All these reasons why society pushes us out of riding motorcycles, aside from the statistical data, okay? It's something that people see as a rebel, a way to prove their own worth, all these reasons why. And sure, for some people, they can do it. Some people, they can ride a bike safely. Some people can't. It's one of those things you find out. But the fact is that there are people who are good riders who get killed in accidents, and there are people who are bad riders who ride without getting in accidents because it's just dumb luck. It's their luck. That things have fallen their way, and we all say at some point, we worry about that accident out there. There's some people out there who talk about sooner or later, you're going to go down, that kind of thing. I think it's safe to say that statistically, the more we ride, the longer we ride, the more rides we take. Certainly, we ride in bad weather, we ride on bad roads, we ride when we're drinking, we ride at high speeds. The chances of us getting into a major accident go up. Obviously, that also is a factor of the range of riders out there who do these kind of things and the risks they take while riding. It all is tied together. Okay, there's no way you can separate one part of motorcycling from everything else. The thing is, we have to look at these parts regardless. We know that drinking and riding is bad. We know that riding without a helmet is bad. Why? Well, because drinking affects your mental capabilities and your decision making, and riding without a helmet affects your ability to survive after having an accident. And if you put those two together, drinking and riding without a helmet is a very bad way to go, through life as a motorcyclist, because it raises the chance that you'll make a bad decision. You're mentally impaired, your reflexes and your balance are affected. And then if you have the accident, which is more likely for you to have, your chance of surviving that accident with minimal brain injuries, brain damage, and head injuries is reduced because you're not wearing a helmet, right? So there's these two pieces you put together. And the fact is that riding a motorcycle is never one thing. It's never like one isolated thing. You're always dealing with a combination of factors. You have to look at that combination of factors all the time when you ride. And people will say, well, you shouldn't do this, well, you shouldn't do that. And the fact of the matter is that it's not so much that you shouldn't do this or that, it's that usually it's that you shouldn't do this and that, or you shouldn't do this, and that, and the other. I could think it's fairly safe to say that there are always going to be some things that you literally shouldn't do on a bike, like ride it into a brick wall, like ride the wrong way on in traffic on the highway, that are in and of themselves going to be fatal. But the reality is there are always going to be people who challenge these absolutes and say, well, if I do this, that, the other, and 5 other different things, then I can do it. And you're going to read about things like that in the paper, and people like that are going to get press, and they're going to be, I don't know, even more exalted than the average motorcyclist. Some people will say that they're absolutely crazy, and some people will say, look, he can't be that crazy if he did that and survived it. Okay, that's a sign of someone of advanced intelligence. And that's the other problem that we run into with motorcycling, is there are always going to be people who flaunt the conventional wisdom and succeed, and by doing so believe that they are smarter than the average bear, that the conventional wisdom doesn't apply to them because they're too smart, they're too good, they're the Bonnie and Clyde of the motorcycle community. The guys who race their bikes at high speed on the highway, videotape them fleeing from cops and getting away with it, are gonna be the people who argue, and there are gonna be people who support them who say, it's not a problem with speeding, it's not a problem with reckless riding, it's not a problem with racing at high speeds on the highway, it's simply a problem with getting caught. And that kind of mentality is the criminal mentality. It's not a problem with starting a meth lab. It's not a problem with becoming a meth dealer. It's not a problem with smoking meth. It's a problem with getting caught by the police, or getting shot, or dying of, having your teeth rot and your brain rot from doing meth. There's always going to be that criminal mentality which rationalizes doing stupid, reckless shit on a bike, just like anything else. Okay? There's always going to be people who say you die when you stop living and do reckless, stupid shit on a motorcycle, because to them, they're not alive unless they're doing reckless, stupid shit on a bike, even if it might cost them their lives. There are always going to be people who are like Indian Larry, who decide that riding around on top of the tank of a motorcycle standing on a tank with no helmet is a sign of life, because that's what God has given to them, that life. And when they die, it's not because they did something stupid. It's because God decided to take the life back from them. And it's a matter of it's not up to them to decide whether they live or die. It's God's decision. The problem with motorcycling is because it does involve a human being by its very nature. You also expose the concept of motorcycling to a wide range of human faults and fails and frailties, just as it benefits from human intelligence, common sense, rationality, and logic. You can't separate the one from the other, because the ultimate decision about what is a failure is when you fail one way or the other. And as I've said, the concept of failing while riding a motorcycle can be different to different people. In our society, one of the things we learn is that there's always a difference in values and standards, just as there is a difference between, in logic and facts and common sense. Different people see the same situation differently because they're different people. And one of the things you learn in life is you have to realize the limits in trying to argue with people that are just too whacked out to have a reasonable argument with, a reasonable discussion. And that happens on both sides, both the conservative side, and it happens on the liberal side. It happens on the passive side, it happens on the aggressive side. You have to limit your arguments and your discussions to people who have enough in common with you to even have a reasonable conversation. Motorcyclists come in all shapes and sizes. It doesn't take a PhD to ride a motorcycle. And simply the fact that you failed to graduate from high school, or, that you've done prison time since you were 16, doesn't mean that you can't ride a bike. It's not like, voting or having a two-story house. It doesn't require a lot to ride a bike. And so as motorcyclists, we have to deal with this wide range of humanity that ride. What I think people don't recognize is, yes, it's gonna be dangerous for some people simply because of who they are. That doesn't mean it's gonna be dangerous for everyone, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that just because you're an above average intellect person who's successful in life and has a solid income and a good family and all this kind of stuff, that doesn't mean it won't be dangerous for you just because of that. The fact that you're successful as a tech person or a business person or a banker or whatever doesn't mean that riding motorcycles is not dangerous for you, okay? They're two different concepts. People often overlook this, how different they are, okay? Suffice to say that there's a lot to riding a motorcycle that relies on what's going on between your ears, and some people just can't handle that. They just can't process it properly. They can't deal with that properly, and they will die riding bikes. They will get severely injured or die riding motorcycles as a result. And that, if anything that you take from this 15-minute message, is not a factor of how smart or how dumb you are, how successful or how much of a failure you are as a person. It is not a factor of how cool you are or how much of a geek you are or how badass you are or how much of a pacifist you are. It's not a matter of how experienced you are or how inexperienced you are. People die riding bikes from killed or crushed or have your neck broken or right off a cliff from all these categories because a motorcycle does not ask how cool you are. It does not ask how smart you are. It does not ask how dumb you are. It simply asks whether you can stay on two wheels and not kill yourself. That's it. That is the one thing you have to worry about all the time. And if you fail to appreciate that question and the risk associated with that question properly, you're going to get killed. That is the mentality of motorcycling that you have to keep in mind. Okay, so the issue is this. Once you get past the adjective and you have your first concern is keeping the bike on two wheels, which is a state of existence. Okay? Once you get past all that and you focus on that state of existence, then you have what is called a prioritization, where the priority that is most in mind, the foremost concern that you have, is keeping the bike on two wheels. Now, you can either continue to make that your first priority and fail to do it, or you can fail to keep that as your first priority and let something else be your first priority and fail to do what you should do as far as keeping a bike on two wheels because you're more concerned about some other priority. Or you can allow other thoughts to come into your mind as priorities while even keeping the bike on two wheels as your first priority, because your mind is distracted with other priorities or possibly even priorities that conflict with your first priority of keeping the bike on two wheels. You can fail to keep the bike on two wheels for that reason also. So to summarize, it's a failure to execute, a failure to prioritize and maintain prioritization, or a failure to declutter, to keep the mind from being occupied by issues which conflict and cause chaos and allow your first priority to be undermined and undercut by all these other priorities. I'm just going to say this. The one thing that people have to keep in mind when you ride a motorcycle is that if you aren't concerned enough with keeping that bike on two wheels, then you're going to wreck. It's a either or, okay? You can argue with that all day long. When you go down, come up with all kinds of excuses for why you went down, blame it on 5 or 6 other people. Fact is, if you don't concern yourself enough with staying on two wheels, then you won't stay on two wheels. That is the one thing that I have learned in all my years of riding and all my years of watching other people wreck. Okay, I'm not going to say I haven't wrecked myself, but my wrecks have been few and far between. Because when I ride, the first thing I'm worried about, and I'd say the first 10 things I'm worried about, is making sure I stay on two wheels and I'm not sliding down the highway. Don't get hit by another car or some other vehicle or slide off the road. Not wrecking is my main concern by far when I ride. And I can only suggest that it is the same for you.